Good morning. Welcome back to the podcast. So we're into the dark months of winter as we get into the UK, or late autumn, winter now. So it's always an interesting morning when you wake up and you see the dark outside. But look, I'm going to share some insights today around a subject in selling that I think is really, really important. I've covered lots of different areas. I was looking through the podcast list going, I must have covered this, and I haven't. So it's going to be a new one for everyone that's listening. And it's all about how to handle new inbound leads effectively. So we always think when it comes to sales and selling that we've got to go and generate outbound leads, and that's fine. But there is a lot of misconception around inbound leads. So when people reach out to you, and I wanted to talk about this today because I think it's critical. If you are lucky enough as a company or business, or in what you do as a salesperson, to have lots of inbound leads coming through to you, you are blessed. Okay, your marketing team, your branding team, however it's being done, however you've been in business a long time, the fact you have lots of inbound leads coming through is a great thing for you. It's amazing. It's the sort of, generating lots of, and people coming to you all the time wanting business, wanting the opportunity to speak about business is sort of like the holy grail that most companies want. Generating these is perfect. But, and I'm going to say a but, I often see people F this up and they get it badly wrong and they wonder why it didn't happen. And it's because they approached it in the wrong way. So what I want to do today is I want to talk through a number of steps that you need to take on as part of this process. And just to make sure that you're giving yourself the best chance of winning the deal. Because as a salesperson or business person, if someone's saying, hey, I want to potentially do business with your company, it is a great opportunity. I had one last night. I had a guy, I sponsored a golf day a couple of days ago with my business, and I had someone reach out to me from it and say, hey, I'd like to have a chat to you about this. It was a perfect inbound lead. They reached out to me. I'll share some screenshots actually on the video we do of this. In fact, if I can, I don't know if I can share some screenshots on the, but basically I had someone reach out to me and say, yeah, I'd love to chat to you about what you can do to help me and my team. It was perfect. But there was an approach to take with it, and I'll share how I approached it. But more importantly, do I think I'll win do business with that person, that company? Yes, I do. They want some stuff in January, and I'm meeting them next Wednesday to go through the proposal that I've shared. I've already outlined what the budget's going to be from an initial conversation, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I think it's mine, being honest, but I could be wrong. I'm not being assuming it, but I think it's mine because I approached it in the way that I meant that I'll talk about now. So first and foremost, my first point about this is do not assume that this is a shoo-in or this is a guaranteed deal. If you start assuming things around this opportunity that it's bound to be yours, before you've had that first conversation or the second conversation, you are going to, it's going to potentially kick you in the backside. As I said at the start, people just assume it's not. When an inbound lead comes in, what it is that person may well have done some research on your company. They may well have done some research on you. They may well have done a bit of investigation work. But what they are doing is, I think I'm potentially interested in your company, but I'm not sure. I want to have a conversation to check. So when you are in that situation, then please don't assume it's guaranteed. I've seen so many salespeople that go into those calls quite arrogantly and with basically a case of when do you want to sign up? And they ruin the opportunity because the person just still needs that convincing. So first, you just don't assume that it's a done deal. Still accept you have to do your work for it, that you've got to go through the same process that you would maybe do on an outbound call and conversation, although maybe a little bit less because they've built up a bit of a perception and value of you. The person that I spoke to yesterday had seen my banners at a golf day, had had a look at my website, had had a look at my YouTube channel, so had seen a bit about me and who I was. So again, I was in a great position for that, but I still made sure that I handled that call in the right way and didn't assume anything. And I won't assume anything, even though I think I'm going to get a chance to win that deal. I won't assume anything till it's done, sealed, signed, and the money's in my bank account and I've delivered what I've needed to. So that's the first point. The second point is this, and it's really sad. So I reach out and buy local services from lots of companies in my area. And I reached out to a lady for a service to do with my feet a week and a half ago. And the first thing that it did, she took her 4 days to reply to the message. And I'd gone to her website and completed a contact us form. So the second point I'm going to say to you is, if you get an inbound lead or an opportunity, respond quickly. There's a great saying that I always used to use in my software business, which was, and we actually used to use it in hours, not in days, but it's meant in days, which was another day older, another day colder. And we used to say another hour older, another hour colder. Because in our software business, we knew, and we statistically knew this, that if you engage with someone that was taking a trial of our software within the first hour, your chance of converting them was higher. I think about 23% higher, something like that. We worked that statistically. So when you engage with them initially, because what those people were doing, it was those people were trialing different software. So in our case, we had a CRM software that we sold, and we knew that they were trialing 2 or 3 different bits of software. So we wanted to be the first mover, to get first mover advantage. So when you get a lead opportunity, a new inbound lead that comes in, and it might come in through email, it might come in through a conversation, it might come in through social media, respond quickly. And that response should be, as I'll talk about in a moment, a professional response you can engage with that's a follow-up to their query. And again, with the guy that messaged me, I think he messaged me, I can't remember what it was, might have been, in fact, I'll tell you exactly how long it took me to message him back. There you go. This is the reality of the conversation that I had with him. So let's have a look. He messaged me, "Hi James, at 13:36. So 13:36 on, what day was that? That was Monday. He messaged me at 13:36 on Monday. And there you go. And my message back at 13:41. There you go. I'll show you that message there. You know if you can see it on the call, but you can't. There you go. You might be able to see details of that there. I messaged back at 13:41. "Hi there, thanks for the message. Happy to arrange a call and see if I can help. If not, recommend another option." I'll come on to that in a moment. "Does this Thursday work for you to chat, say 1 p.m? Thanks for coming back so quickly, James. Sorry I forgot to sign my name. It's I can do Thursday, but after 2, we're not." And then we arranged to read some time, and we spoke at 5:15. So the point being, be quick in your response. The lady that I messaged, that for the service that I offered, came back, within I think it was 4 days, and I was like, I've sort of picked another option by then. Now, some people might say, don't respond too quickly. And there is a sort of sense to that. I guess for me, that person reached out to me on WhatsApp. They'd been given my number by someone else. I had looked at the message because I wasn't sure who it was from. And I always think, okay, if someone sees that I've looked at the message and I haven't replied, it could send a warning signal to them, or maybe he's not interested. So would I normally reply back within 5 minutes? Probably no. 5 minutes is pretty quick. But certainly within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I would like to have replied back. Or, and this is the other option, I'd like to have someone in my team that can have replied back for me to say, thanks very much for the inquiry. We'd love to have a chat to you about it, and let's arrange a time to do this. So I definitely think, if you're getting these done through email or through your website, then also consider to have some form of autoresponder within there. It's not a bad idea. I don't like them totally, because it means that if people know that it's not a human approach. But a message that says, appreciate you reaching out to us. We're going to have a look at this, and one of our team will get back to you within X hours, I think is a great thing to do. It shows that person at the deal, that their inquiry has been received, and it's not a bad way to be able to get something coming through to them, which they can then think, okay, at least I know that something's going to happen as a result of this. So I definitely say to you, respond quickly. If you leave it for 2 or 3 days, I think you're going to potentially miss out on the opportunity. And as I did with this lady, I'd said to her, when she came back to me afterwards and said, I can do this time, I was like, I've made a different decision by that. The other option, of course, which you can do when it comes to this type of stuff, is you can put a link on your website or on an autoresponder email that links to a Calendly booking or an Outlook booking or a Google booking, so someone can book the meeting themselves. And again, that's really helpful thing to do, especially if you're doing things late at night. So if someone's reaching out to you late at night and they get an autoresponder, if someone's doing it at 9 o'clock at night, no one expects someone to be available at that time unless you're offering a 24/7 service. But if you put a calendar booking in, they can then book it themselves, so they don't have to have you involved in the process. So that can work really nicely as an auto response mechanism to be put in place, and I encourage you to do that. So, point number 3, and this is related to that is if you are replying back yourself, if you haven't set that service up, or if you haven't got that auto response on, these nurturing services and sequences in place, that's absolutely fine. But if you haven't, be careful about how you approach things. So sometimes people will get leads or send an email to their phone, and what I see people doing is they're replying on their phone, and then they make mistakes on their phone. And look, we all know that we're busy, we're doing stuff here and there, and we're out and about and whatever else. But I see things such as capital casing, which is said, we'll put Dear James or Hi James with a small a small H on the hi and a small J on the James. And you might call me, you might say I'm being a bit pedantic here, and that's ridiculous to even think that way. But I'm a bit like, those small details really matter to me. And it not just matter to me, they matter to lots of different people. Especially if you I think you've got to be really careful that you've got to be professional in your approach. Or sometimes I've seen people do spelling mistakes in that area. And so, yes, you want to respond quickly, but you want to be just a bit professional in your approach. Just be careful not to over reply too quickly and then make a mistake that makes the other person think that you're careless about what you do. And obviously people on phones, can sometimes have sent from Outlook or sent from my phone, and I've seen sometimes people making a bit of a joke of it, excuse the brevity because my fingers are fat or whatever else. And that's sort of fine. But sometimes actually in modern systems out with Gmail and in Outlook, you can basically make sure that the response with your signature looks as it would do normally. And I think that's a good thing. And then to link into that, I would also encourage you to create some templates. So what do I mean by templates? Just create 2 or 3 different templates that you can write down, maybe when you've got a quieter period when you're in your office, and write down 2 or 3 templates. And then if you have them on your phone, store them on your notes on your phone, or if you're out and about, so that if you don't have an automated system in place, just write down 2 or 3 templates that are well done, that says dear, or hi so and so. And obviously what you've then got to do is put that person's name in capital, not in capitals, but in capital casing in that approach. And just actually, have 3 or 4 templates that come back and that send what you would send back to them. So create a template, put them in your phone, and when that lead comes through, then you can reply back quite quickly, knowing that you've got your template there. So 3 or 4 templates. One might be, I'm busy at the moment, I'm out and about at the moment, but I'll come back to you. Another one might be, great to hear from you, would love to have a chat. Here's a link to my diary. Or another one might be, I've got 2 times available, it's X or Y available, and then you can then change those times. So once you've got the template in place, it can help you. And I think that's a really, really nice way of ensuring that you can respond quickly, but you respond on a consistent way as well. The benefit about also using templates, and sometimes what you might find is inbound, and this again foxes a lot of people, inbound leads will come in and you reply back and then you say, oh, they never came back to me. Well, what happened? And it's because, again, you were too old, you were too long to get back to them. But a lot of the time, people have got other stuff going on in their lives. They've got things happening, so they forget what's going on. So it's your job then to make sure that you can follow up with them, and we'll talk about following up in a moment. But you can also then see, if you've used a template, which of your templates might work and not work. So again, you might have a template that is a bit professional, but a bit more business-like that doesn't work. But you might have a more humorous one, or a more funnier one, or a more, not of course social is the wrong word, but a more based on your character that works better. So you can try and see which ones work and which ones get responses. And in lots of situations in sales and business, we should be testing. We should be trying to see what works and what doesn't work. So create a template that you can have, that you can respond quickly, but be professional in your approach back. It's definitely a really professional thing to do. So the next point to this is, and this again is something, if the service that you sell is a little bit more complicated, or is a little bit more, there's lots of not difficult areas to it, but it's not a simple purchase. It's a much more maybe more expensive service or value. One of the things that you can also do within these responses back is to say within your communication back, lovely to hear from you, really looking forward to having a conversation with you. Ahead of the call, I'd love to learn as much as possible about your business or your situation. So if you'd be able to complete a bit of information so that I can be prepared ahead of that call, that'd be great. And what you can do is you can link them to a little form. You can create these forms on your website or on Google Forms or type forms. forms or anything like that, where it can maybe ask some questions around their current situation, what they're looking to do, what infrastructure they've currently got in place. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be lots and lots of questions, but 3 or 4 questions that you can use for them to share information. They've come to you, and the way to position it is to say, I want to ensure that the time I spend with you, I can give you the most value possible. So the more I understand about you, the better it is, and the more I can be prepared ahead of when we speak or have a conversation. And most people, if they're inbound leads, if they're feeling comfortable, will happily then share some further details, because they know that actually they want to make sure that conversation is valuable. They're giving up their time. So therefore, they'd rather give up their time and know their situation, and for you to know their situation, than have to explain that and then mean that it's difficult for them. So sometimes create a form where they can submit information. They won't always do it. Sometimes people don't do it, and that's fine. You can obviously ask the questions that you ask on the form when you do that, have that conversation. But it's definitely worthwhile doing, so that they can try and again, in some situations, when I've had forms completed for people, I've been able to see what the situation is, what they're looking to do, what's stopping them from achieving things. So I've been able to then go into that conversation with a bit more insight on their situation, and we can then dig into the pain a bit more, which obviously helps us work out what the solution could be and how we can help. So my next point is this: when you do get information from people, one of the things that sometimes people tend to do, and this is something you've got to be careful of. So I was working with one of my clients on Tuesday, and I was helping one of the team make some calls there, and we actually spoke to a prospect and booked a call there and then, which is good. It's helpful for the sales team to understand that that's how it could be done. But one of the things that and by the way, that's the service we offer. So if you're thinking, I wouldn't mind James coming into my business and helping my sales team make some calls, and reach out to me. That's what we can do. But anyway, so we basically booked a call. But it's interesting because the person I spoke to immediately said, happy to have a meeting, but don't add me to any marketing lists, please. So they were very keen not to be added into marketing lists. And sometimes what happens is people get leads come in and they get automatically added into every distribution list going. And then if the meeting's up for a week, they're being sent a whole load of marketing stuff that isn't relevant or isn't useful for them, which then puts them off you. So just be careful about doing that. I wouldn't be adding prospects to marketing lists until you've had a conversation with them. If you are going to do something and it doesn't hurt to do one, maybe, depends on how long the meeting's going to be. If it's going to be 6 weeks, then obviously you might want to send them a bit more. But if it's a week or so, it's okay to share something of value in an automated way, or as an email way, and most of it was done automatically, but, hey, but make sure the template is created for it. Hey, so-and-so, we're looking forward to chatting to you in the next week or so. Ahead of our conversation, we thought this might be useful. So especially if you can share a guide or a resource or a case study a bit early, I'd still stay at that stage. But a guide, let's say someone's asking you for a conversation around, in my case, the person was asking me about solving some sales problems. They were getting ghosted on lots of sales proposals. So what I did, I didn't have time to send them the gap, because the gap between Monday and Thursday was too small. But what I'll be doing ahead of my meeting with that person is then sending them a guide on how to stop being ghosted on sales calls. And it's like, perfect. So what I do is I'm adding value, I'm stacking value up, and I'm not just adding them to an email list that basically means they get everything that I send out. So really, try and create some value if you can. And think about what you send. I always talk about, there's a blog on my website about, and I think I might have even done a podcast about tofu, mofu, and bofu. So tofu is top of funnel content. So top of funnel content are things like guides and explainers. Middle of funnel content is then more how you put the solution together, and bottom of funnel content is more case studies. So, and at that stage, you don't know where that lead is. So maybe I'd leave, case study to the bottom of the funnel. So look, just share some value if you can, if the meeting's going to take a little while, but don't add them into email lists, or just be careful about doing that. I really think if you're not careful, they could get to the conversation with you and already feel a bit pissed off with your company because you've sent them a load of stuff that they don't find useful. So here's the other thing about responding to inbound leads that come through. Sometimes when they come through on email, one of the things that people will have maybe uncertainty about is, do we do it through email? And I'm a big believer. It depends what you sell. If you sell a very transactional product, you can do it all through email and through people not interfacing with you. But that's where AI is also going to help in the next few years, because you can automate a lot of processes and the sale is done. But if you sell something with a bit of value, then I think it's worth you sometimes asking if you can call, but if you don't get an answer, then just calling. So what I always try and do is make sure with any inbound lead, we want to ask permission, because at that point, we don't know whether the prospect prefers to do things on email or whether they're happy to have that conversation. So I will often send an email saying, "Hi, so-and-so, really appreciate your inquiry. Thanks for that. I'll share an email. I'm replying back now an email, but I'll also look to call you on Thursday at 3 p.m. To find out a bit more about your situation, see if we can help." And the reason I say about asking if you can call or telling them you're going to call is if you then do call them at Thursday at 3 p.m, it's that subtle way of building further trust. And we always want to build trust. I always say to people, sales is about credits and debits, and we want to build further trust with people. And if you say you're going to call someone at 3 p.m. and then you call them, I think, oh, they did what they said they were going to do. But be open to calling someone, and don't give up on the first hurdle. One of the things I often see as well with new leads that come in is people might email initially and then call, and then they didn't hear back, and they think, oh, they didn't want it. Well, no, that person, you don't know that situation. They might have had a family issue. They might have been traveling. They might have been doing it on holiday and then still hold it. You don't know. So add them into your CRM system and add them into your automated pipeline. I mean, you should have what I would call an automated sequence that says, okay, when a new lead comes in, we're going to do these 7 or 8 steps over the course of the next couple of weeks or couple of months. And again, if that's something you're not sure how to do, talk to me and my team. That's what we do to help organizations generate leads and convert them on a consistent basis. But be prepared to follow up and engage with people on a consistent basis. Don't just assume that your one email is going to automatically mean that they're going to be it's done for them. It may take a little bit of time. It may take 2 or 3 outreaches. Treat them as an outbound lead. Be in contact with them. Of course, after 7 or 8 times, you can then use a message to say, hey, sounds like we weren't able to connect, and obviously, appreciate it's not right for us. It's not right for you right this time, but we're going to continue to share some emails with you, and then you can add them to an email list if you want to, or follow up with them in as a follow up every month. But basically, make sure that you accept that you're going to have to engage with people. Just because they're an inbound lead doesn't mean they're a shoo-in, as I said at the start. They're still going to need that nurturing, that process. Okay. A couple of things to also finish off with here, which I'm again hoping it's useful for you to use. This is how I use as I say the inbound leads. Is the first thing I always say, and I've said this in so many sales podcasts, but I'm going to keep repeating it because it works all the time. Is be prepared to use be prepared to go the other way in your conversation with someone. So even though you might think it's a done deal and they want to work with us, so why would I say to them we're not a good fit? It works because it builds trust in the mind of the other person that you're not going to just sell and put anything towards them. So again, the guy I spoke to yesterday, I was able to say, look, great to chat to you today, and look, great to understand what you want to do. And by the way, I'll put a link into how to approach outbound discovery calls, which is a podcast I covered last week. And I share that with you so you can see those. But I was still able to say, look, and let's talk through a few different things over the course of the next sort of 20 minutes, half hour. And if it turns out I'm not the right person, then I'll happily recommend someone else. And actually, that's exactly what I did in the conversation that I had with that person. I literally said to them, I think, what was it? I said, yeah, thanks for the message. Happy to arrange a call and see if I can help, or if not, recommend another option. So I always give them this exit because it makes them feel, oh, I'm not going to push them towards doing something that they don't feel comfortable with. Give them the exit clause. It works on a regular basis. So my final couple of points on this is don't be afraid when you're in these conversations to sometimes say no, because just because it's an inbound lead, it doesn't mean to say they automatically know exactly what you do in your USPs and your offering. They may be looking for a specific type of service of which you're the higher end of that and you're not the right fit. And so don't be afraid to say, no, actually, that's not something we're able to do. I always talk to people, you do not want BMW customers, bitches, moaners and whiners, or as I call them sometimes, hot curry customers. Because you might bring them in, but they can hurt like hell elsewhere. And I've seen this examples in my other, businesses at the moment where we've taken on people where my gut feel was, oh, this could be hard work. And it's turned out to be hard work. Sometimes you're better off to say no and to resist the temptation to work with someone than to actually then do that work and then find it's going to cause a problem. So be prepared to say no. Be prepared to actually, you hope it's going to be a good fit. You hope your marketing has done the job. You hope that they're going to be a right fit for you, but it may well be that they're not. They may well be looking for A and you offer B. And sometimes you're better off to be able to know that. And that's why, again, one of the things I talk about a lot, I've done a podcast on it, which we'll link to, around sales qualification. In fact, I've done a video on this as well. So if you head to my YouTube channel on sales qualification, I've covered this off. Definitely make sure that there are times when it is a good fit, but there's times when it's not, and be prepared for that. So a couple of final points. Pricing. So people would sometimes say to you, sometimes say to me on these calls, because these calls are discovery calls. They're discovery calls, but the first stage, you've had them in. And I always say to people that on pricing's an interesting one. I don't mention pricing in the first 10, 15 minutes of a call, because it's basically, to me, you're gonna if someone's first question is to ask for pricing, then I will always go back with, look, happy to chat about pricing, very happy to talk about it and give you a range of what it looks like, but let me understand your situation first, and I can then, decide, help you, work out the pricing from there. And of course, if someone's really keen just to get pricing there and then you can give them a range, say, look, it could range from this to this, depending on what you're looking for. But and the call I had yesterday with the guy, I knew that the next stage was for us to, in fact, I'm meeting him next week, and the next stage was to meet with him and provide an outline. And so I said, look, I approached the question. I said, look, talk me through, how you plan, what your thoughts are on investing in this. What were you, what's worked for you in the past when you've done this? And that's a great phrase to use. What's worked for you in the past, or how have you invested in this sort of stuff in the past? And he said to me, well, I had a figure in mind, which was this and this. And I said, okay, yeah, look, I'm sure based upon that, I can make it work. And I knew that figure was in the range that I would offer it at. And I was going, yeah, I think we can make that work. So if you get someone ask you for pricing really quickly, just be a bit careful about that. I'm not trying to say be obtuse. Don't sort of try and, and if they really just want pricing, then again, give them that range. But say them, if your service depends on whether they want the low option, the high option, or the medium option, right? So I want to find out a bit more about your situation. I'll give you pricing. I'm happy to give you pricing, but tell me what you're looking for, and then I can help you get the pricing that you want. But again, I would just be careful. It is a bit of a warning sign if it's the first thing that comes up. It generally tells me that they're probably talking to 2 or 3 providers and that they're just looking for pricing details. And if you're not lower or the same price as those other people, they're not going to choose you. So just be careful of that. And again, we don't want to waste our time in these conversations. The best thing is to be able to do is to fail fast. If I know it's not a good option, then I want to know that quite quickly. And then the final point I mentioned about inbound leads is do the same as what I would encourage you to do with regard to outbound leads, is report and measure it. If you start to measure and write down, okay, I've had a new lead come in and, okay, this is where it came from and this is our source. And you can start to see what tools and marketing tools you're using that are working. So is it, in my case, the golf days that I'm doing are potentially generating revenue, so I'm going to do some more of them. But if it's other stuff that's working, then you can basically have that, you can have that discussion and review in your internal teams to see where you can invest. But also you can then start to improve other areas that aren't working for you, or you can start diverting your funds into the areas that make sense. So I always think, what you report and you can measure, you can improve. So just write down some of these stats, keep them in a record, keep them, on a spreadsheet or on a CRM system so you can report what's happening where, and then start to use that effectively. So look, these are some of my thoughts around how to deal with an inbound lead. I always, as I say, I think inbound leads are just as important as outbound leads, but I hope it's given you some ideas on how to approach it and what to do differently. I think it's brilliant if you're in that position and you're in a position where you literally are, you've got this happening. Great, good on you. But just make sure you take advantage of the opportunity. It's a bit of an open goal, but don't pass it wider than that, basically. Make sure you do the right things to guarantee that goal. So as I always do, I finished the podcast on an inspirational story, and the story today is a guy called Tony Christensen, who in his childhood, he's from New Zealand. There's a great picture of him on his Wikipedia site where he's just standing on this bar, basically. He lost his legs in a train accident in childhood, but he decided that he was going to show that his theme was self-belief, and that you can achieve things in life and you can do things, and he's climbed things and he's done things, and he's an incredible story that I think is, when you see him climb 1.5 meter high scaffolding pole, you think, wow, and this guy's got no legs. You think, blimey, what an inspirational story. So yeah, so Tony Christensen is my inspirational story today. He's lost his legs, but still decided to make sure that he lived life and led the best life possible and inspired others. So I think those sort of stories just make me go, wow, what can I complain about and moan about? No, when someone's lost their legs and they still plowed on, I've got to get on and make sure I make today the best day it can be. So that's it for me today. As ever, thank you so much for listening. If you do enjoy the podcast, please do rate it, share it with other people. I'm trying to get more guests on as well at the moment. We've got a couple of really good guests coming through in the next couple of weeks, which will be great, which we'll share with you some face-to-face. We'll do a podcast on a deal. We're going to call it the deal. Potentially, we're going to call it the deal that saved the country. There you go. I'll keep that in mind for you. But if you listen to this, I'm going to be a podcast guest. If you're a sales expert or have been in the sales world for a long time and achieved lots of success, I'd love to bring you on the podcast as well. But if not, I wish you a brilliant week ahead. Thanks again for listening and giving me your ears or your eyes if you're watching on YouTube. And I'll see you next week and have a safe selling week. Take care. Bye-bye.